logic argument level, on a constructive logic argument level, that these people with utopia, I got to say that's the opposite of. I personally think that if there is a conspiracy to depopulate, you know, killing off the young is the opposite of what we need, because economists say we need the young to pay for the old. You know, coronavirus is pretty much depopulating us in the way that is most effective for our society, and that is by killing off the old and the weak.
Well, you think about it like this. If you were to look at the recent CDC guidelines for masks, everything is based on like this political and this legal jargon. It's not really based on logic or reason. It's based on how people feel. It's based on politics. It's based on, you know, even religion to some degree. It's based on even conspiracy for all intents and purposes. You look at that recent report and the CDC says, oh my God, we need to wear masks again because of a few people in Massachusetts who got quote unquote sick. Well, if you read the report, most of them didn't get sick. There were no symptoms. They never identified that people were actually sick. They simply tested positive for a particle in their body. The inventor of that PCR test said that that doesn't mean that you're sick. He died very, very recently, right before the so-called pandemic began. Now they're switching the PCR test over to a new test that George Soros and Bill Gates, according to Forbes, not my opinion, just purchased a big company called Mologic that is going to now administer these new tests. The New York Times in the state of New York here, where I am, acknowledged that if they weren't running the PCR test at such a high number of cycles, usually it's 33, in the case here in New York and other places, it's up to 48, they wouldn't have positive cases anyway. So if you look at those cases in that new CDC report, they acknowledge in the report that 74% of the people that got quote unquote sick, even though they weren't really sick, they just tested positive, had been vaccinated. So it doesn't make any sense why the people that got vaccinated to prevent them from getting sick actually ended up getting sick. And the CDC report was suggesting that it's because other people didn't get vaccinated, despite the evidence in the report suggesting essentially the opposite. So when I hear things like that, to me, it's not about politics, religion. It's about actual science. And it's actually about, in my opinion, it's actually about logic and philosophy, perhaps more than that. It's about reason. And I think that we have thrown, in so many ways, we've thrown reason to the side.
You know, I agree with a lot of the things you're saying, but, you know, I do have to get somewhat combative here. And, you know, just to let the audience know, we love Ryan. We want to have him on again. But I do feel a little like, you know, I personally believe that one man in this society is not capable of holding the world's knowledge. Not that I'm saying that you're saying that you are. I'm saying that we have to trust our institutions, and one of those institutions is the medical and scientific one. And I'm a little scared that we're being irresponsible by telling people not to.
But all I'm saying is to read what they're writing, to read what they're publishing. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll give you an example. I was, my fiance is going to be going to college and going back to college, and she's looking at a university. And she looked at the university and was looking to see if they require vaccines to attend, and they don't. And we looked on the website though, and it says that they are, you know, they're asking students if they'd like to be vaccinated, they can, but they're not forcing anybody. And it says the vaccine is perfectly safe, it's effective, it's the same terminology they always use, and that there's no evidence that it causes any harmful effects, any side effects, etc. And now the bottom line here is it doesn't matter what I think or what you think. If you want to look at the actual science, then you can look at the science. If you go to the FDA's website, and it's a very simple find, type in FDA fact sheet COVID-19 vaccines, and you'll pull up the PDFs from the FDA's website of Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, etc. And if you read those sheets, it will literally, I mean, it's unbelievable. I know it doesn't sound like I'm telling you the truth or I'm making this up, but just type that in, you'll literally find it. It lists the side effects of the vaccine as being literally the same symptoms of COVID-19. And it further states that if you have any allergic reactions to a previous shot, or you have had anaphylactic shock in the past for anything, you have allergies, and a number of other things, depending on which fact sheet you look at, that it's dangerous and that you shouldn't take it. And that if you're pregnant, you should simply consult with your healthcare practitioner. They don't even list any information about pregnancy in the fact sheet. You can also look on the CDC's website about certain vaccine ingredients. Now, it's not a matter of like my opinion. I'm simply going and I'm looking at what the FDA and what the CDC publishes. What I'm saying is, and I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible because I understand where you're coming from.
Sure.
And I think that we actually agree. You're saying we should listen to those institutions. Sure, we should, but we shouldn't listen to what they tell us in a news conference, a press conference, or in a media headline publication. What we should listen to is the data, and the data says different than what the people tell us in the news or in the nightly coronavirus updates. That's what's confusing to me. I mean, doesn't that sound confusing to you? Why would the data be different than what they're telling us when they're using that same data to tell us something different? It doesn't make any sense.
Oh no, that definitely is a problem, because here we have the media who's sensationalizing. They need viewers, and here we have a situation with the disease where we are constantly learning what's going on with that sickness. So the data is constantly changing, and the news is constantly spinning it in order to sell more news. I do agree with that. My wife is upstairs, like I said, right now in quarantine. And, she's trying to research when and exactly how she should know that she's done being a danger to my daughter and I. And she just says, man, there is just a mad amount of information. And I said, well, maybe you should just check the CDC website and stick with that. And she's just, oh, yeah, but even that's changing constantly. And she is a firm believer in science and the institutions and trying to follow this. And I understand that it leaves a lot of people scared and confused. I mean, fear, my personal opinion is that fear is the number one motivator for anybody, for anything. You can boil down just about any emotion to people's fear response, from parenting and love to whatever. And, I think it's a great motivator, and people's fears are used against them a lot, especially by the media. So I definitely agree with that. I just want to be sure that I'm not being irresponsible and alluding to my audience that to take their own health into their own hands without looking further into it.